that for me was step one. And then after I had taken some steps to make my house a little bit more energy efficient, I started to run some experiments on my house, and I was noticing that when my furnace would come on, it would run for like 5 minutes, maybe 9 minutes at a time. It's these real short little bursts. And I actually do have a graph which I can share here. Great. But this was the sort of thing that I was seeing, where this is just kind of my hourly, every single hour. How long was it running? And it was just running for a few minutes every hour. Kind of
Oh,
would run a little bit longer at this time because it was usually sort of ramping up when I would wake up. But really, on the entire, this is for a first actually in town, basically from mid-December to mid-March. They're just seeing that on a daily basis, it's running for about 2 hours. On a really cold day, maybe getting to 4 hours. And this is sort of what is meant when people talk about a furnace being a chainsaw, and kind of being this overpowered unit that you don't necessarily need all of the heat that it's capable of providing, and it's doing a lot of this cycling on off. And so I was looking at it and I was seeing, my house is operating in a way where I could have sort of a lower powered unit that runs much more efficiently, and I would be able to provide just as much heat as my house needs in order for me to be comfortable. And so actually, if I scroll down here, you can see what I've observed with my heat pump this year. The bars are a little bit higher, right? My runtime is longer. Rather than it being about 2 hours, my heat pump runs for about 6 hours every day. All of them are going a little bit longer, but even though it's running longer, it's using a lot less energy. Heat pumps are just incredibly efficient. They're not actually generating the heat energy. They're moving it. They're transferring it. So they use a fraction of the energy. And in fact, when I compare the energy that I'm using compared to the energy that this other home was using with a furnace, I'm using something like 50% less energy to be able to heat my home. And you can even see here that from the hours of 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, there are no bars here. This was also very intentional because I knew that going on to electricity, that it could be expensive if I were paying peak rates. Right. So you can see that these orange bars, this is when the electricity on the grid is the cheapest. It's only 3 cents per kilowatt hour for me because I'm on a time of use rate. It's also the cleanest. So using energy at that time, I'm almost using my house like a battery. I put the heat into my home. I get it up to kind of a warm temperature. For us, it's like 67, 68 degrees. And then we coast for 5 hours during those peak pricing times. And I have not had to run my heat pump for even 1 minute during peak hours this entire winter. We've been able to coast, and that is what has been able to make it so that our family has actually even seen our bills come down, because I'm using about, I don't know, 33% of my energy, total energy, when the electricity is incredibly clean and incredibly cheap. And so this was sort of the experimentation that I was doing on my house, even before I had the heat pump. And you can actually see that's what this home is doing as well. They're kind of curious to see, what does that coasting look like? And so even though they have a furnace, they've been sort of putting some of that heat energy into their home, and then seeing what the coast is like. They do have a few bars, but that's largely because I didn't filter for weekends and holidays and things like that for this data set. But they've also been able to coast. And one thing that's also pretty exciting is that sometime in 2022, peak hours with APS is going to go from being a 5 hour window to a 3 hour window. And so for us, we've been comfortable coasting. We will sometimes lose maybe 5 or 6 degrees over that period of time on a really cold day. It hasn't necessarily been like a stress to be able to coast for 5 hours, but once it's 3 hours, it could be kind of game changing to be able to just have to coast for 3 hours.